Hello and welcome to the Unnamed Automotive Podcast. My name is Sami Assad, and with me, as always, is my good friend and fellow automotive journalist, Benjamin Hunting. Say hi to the people, Ben.
Greetings, human listeners.
Greetings to everyone. If this is the first time you're listening to our podcast, thank you for trying something new. I will reiterate, Ben and I are a pair of automotive journalists. But more important than that, we're really good friends. Right, Ben?
Friendship is important. I'll give you that.
It's what makes this podcast, it's the engine of this podcast. It's not our automotive knowledge, which is pretty good, but our friendship really drives things forward. You don't agree?
I'm sorry, I zoned out there. Were you talking?
We're such great friends. You can find Ben's work all over the internet, and I hope you do, because he's not listening to me right now.
I'm Ben. Back. No, I'm good.
Okay. Why don't you tell the listeners where they can find your recent articles?
Sure. You can find my work at Motor Trend, at Haggerty, and at driving.ca.
And you can find my work at autotrader.ca, driving.ca, and Capital One's Auto Navigator.
Sammy, you mentioned if people are listening for the first time, thank you for trying something new. If you're listening to the first time, you're going to love this episode because we're talking about two vehicles that we've talked about before. So if this is not the first time...
Okay, hold on. Listen. I think one of them we talked about a different model year.
Yeah, quite a long time ago, but the other one is fairly recent. So balance your expectations accordingly.
Okay, that's fair. That's quite the drive into our review, or segue into our review portion. You got no banter to give the people today?
That was my banter. My banter
was your banter?
It took the form of a warning.
Okay. Well, yeah, you're easy to get along that way because you're always walking into a place, you're warning people about stuff, and it's a great way to start a conversation.
I'm like that movie Knowing, where oh no, sorry,
I haven't seen it. Please spoil it for me.
No, here's the problem. So there's these two Nicolas Cage movies. One's called Knowing, and the other's called Next.
Next.
In Knowing, he finds this weird scroll or something that was written by someone 60 years ago that predicts the end of the world. That's not where I'm going with this. There's this other movie called Next, which I believe is based on a Philip K. Dick short story, one of my favorite science fiction authors, where he can see the next 30 seconds or something like that.
Is it 2 minutes or something until he sleeps with a girl? Now he can see the whole future?
I don't know. It's an oddly specific yet seemingly short period of time.
Yeah.
And so I'm like that. I walk into a room and I'm like, in 30 seconds, this is going to happen. And people are like, please leave, sir. You're disturbing the kittens.
I also love this portion of our podcast where we talk about some obscure movie that maybe 45 people listening will recognize, but those people are super stoked right now. They're on high energy.
I have both of them on Blu-ray, Sammy.
Of course, because you got them on discount. Be blunt, right?
I get all of my Blu-rays on discount.
On
what
ultra discount.
Yeah, $2-3.
How much? $2 to $3 is too much for Knowing or Next.
I don't think so.
How much did you? When did you watch it?
When did I watch it? I have no idea. I mean, I saw it in the theaters when it came out,
and that was it. And you got now you paid an extra $3.
No, I'm sure I've seen them a couple times since then. You got to make sure.
Speaking of seeing it again, I recently drove a 2025 Kona Electric. Well, I last drove the Kona Electric in fall, which allowed me to test it in some colder weather. And now in the hottest summer I've experienced yet,
Your hottest summer so far.
Yeah, so far. I get to drive it again, and my feelings on the Kona have changed a little bit based on the market conditions of electric vehicles, which is to say that when the Kona Electric first debuted a few years ago, and almost another generation ago.
Quite a long time ago, 2019, I believe.
It was seen as an relatively affordable electric vehicle, and it had a compromise in terms of range and performance. And now there are so many more EVs on the market that hover near the price point and performance of the Kona Electric and offer more performance and more range and better charging. And that means that it really struggles to stand out. It makes me wonder why exactly somebody would pick a Kona Electric. And that was the number one thing I was trying to figure out while I drove it.
So I think in the interests of, I drove this vehicle in March of last year, not this most recent March, but of 2024. So I think maybe in the interests of not repeating ourselves too much, I would like to talk about the market position of the vehicle, but I think there's two ways we can go about it. The first is to look at the value of a Kona Electric on the new market, and then look at how an older Kona Electric makes sense as a used car, because I feel like these are two really different value propositions, because this is kind of a legacy EV, as you pointed out. It's not based on eGMP, which is the fine point of technology for Hyundai right now. It doesn't have the 800 volt super fast charging system, and it has a battery that is, I mean, by current standards, it's fine.
Yeah.
But the price of the vehicle is so close to other vehicles that are better in other ways, or similar enough in one way, but better in another specific way, that you might want to consider buying those instead. And it kind of speaks to the idea that we've talked about before, that there are no real cheap EVs left except for the Fiat 500e, which is one of the hardest vehicles in the world to recommend, because it only makes sense for a specific subset of drivers.
Exactly. Yes. So let's talk about let's first talk quickly about the Kona EV's market position as a new vehicle. First of all, at a starting price in the US of $32,000 and a fully loaded price of around $42,000, it's kind of expensive. You can get a vehicle with more range in the Chevy Equinox for around the same amount of money. And even if you don't want to go to Chevrolet, you can stay in the Hyundai dealership and go to get an Ioniq 5.
Sure.
And you can get two versions of the Ioniq 5, one with what they call as a standard range battery, which really means short range battery, which offers a little bit less than the full range of a top range Kona EV, but more than the low range version of the Kona EV.
And and worth pointing out, it's also less horsepower. I mean,
less horsepower.
The Kona EV is 201 horsepower, and
on the top trim.
I'm sorry?
There's a slower version of it.
Yeah, but we're talking about comparing top trim Kona Electric
sure. Let's do
to the Ioniq 5, because otherwise you wouldn't be cross-shopping them. So it's 201 horsepower and 188 pound-feet of torque?
I think so, yeah.
If you compare that to the Ioniq 5, which is like 178 horsepower, I don't know the torque number, but also larger and heavier.
Yeah.
There's going to be a performance difference there too. So it's not exactly apples and oranges, because you can look at it and be like, oh, range is better, blah, blah, blah. But then it's like performance is better, blah, blah, blah. And then the third blah, blah, blah would be, this is a rear wheel drive Ioniq versus a front wheel drive. What are we talking about? Kona.
Yeah.
So like those are all it's three different comparison points for the drivetrain. And it's interesting that they're so closely priced together that you have these options.
But let's be clear here. The shopper looking for a fully loaded Kona Electric or a mid-trim on Ioniq 5 is not one that's prioritizing performance or even, drive configuration, like drive wheel configuration.
Well, you might be, because it's not like
a priority. It shouldn't be a priority.
It's not like the Kona Electric is slow. I mean,
it's not.
They dropped like 102 pound-feet of torque from the engine because they were having problems with the gear reducer. The what is it like? It's like a reduction gear for the transmission kept breaking.
Yeah,
and shredding over time. And I think in order to head off warranty claims, they dropped it down from like 300 pound-feet of torque.
We'll talk about that in a minute, but because I think that's an important thing to talk about the Kona EV in the used car market. We should really just change gears just after I mention this. I cannot see the buyer of a Kona Electric. Basically, what I'm saying is that these are two mainstream electric vehicles in the Hyundai lineup that are very close in price. One is larger and more feature-filled. The other one is smaller. So the only reason you would really get the Kona EV is if you really, really want that size that it offers.
Also, you're going to get a cheaper lease. I mean, it is less expensive. I think
that
would be the primary reason you would get it over an Ioniq.
I think it's worth spending the extra $4,000 or $5,000 from a high-end Kona to a mid-range Ioniq. I think that it's and over the cost of several years of financing or leasing, I think that will not be huge.
So it's worth noting that in Canada, the In Canada, the calculus is a bit different. It's about $9,000 difference.
That's a huge difference. Yes.
So you're going to have to make a choice there.
I don't know if the incentives, I don't think the federal incentive is still going. But
I also don't know if you can buy a short range Ioniq 5 in Canada.
Oh, that makes sense. That's probably...
I'm not sure that's possible anymore.
The trim walk quite a bit.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the car drove really splendidly. There was nothing I had, no issues I really had. It's a tiny bit small inside, so much so that I found myself like kind of the controls or my knees and and the steering wheel, no matter how, like I always felt like things were a little bit too close for comfort. I found my kind of like leg bumping into things even when I was in a really like comfortable seating position. If I had to move or readjust my seat, I ended up like bumping something that I shouldn't have. I've knocked the car into neutral like once or twice while driving it because it has this like column mounted gear selector that I think I was trying to change. I think I was trying to do something with the other stock and I ended up bumping it, and that caught me off guard. But other than that, I mean, totally acceptable. If this is the kind of car you go for, I would recommend the Ioniqs over this, and maybe even the Equinox over this if you're sticking to a budget.
I really like driving the generation Kona Electric that you're driving, though. I thought it was good. It was pretty quick.
Yeah.
I think it looks good too. I think it's one of the better looking small hatchbacks out there.
Okay, sure.
In gas or electric form.
Yeah, it's got that like light bar across the front end. It's got some really attractive wheel designs. I wouldn't call it ugly for sure, but I would recommend it over. Stands out.
I would recommend it over a Leaf.
Yeah, easily, no problem.
So,
but the important thing to point out is how much you can get a used Kona Electric for.
Yeah, so
because this is something you're currently doing, researching as a personal side project.
Well, it's not a personal side project. It's we need to replace our vehicle. And we initially had planned to go with like an Ioniq 6, but the prices just aren't coming down. I had thought that with the reduction in incentives in Canada, combined with the slowing market for EVs, that Hyundai would have to do a reality check on some of their pricing, because a lot of the cars that are available in Canada are very loaded in terms of features, because Hyundai was able to take advantage of the very generous incentives that were available to kind of offset the price of the higher price of these loaded vehicles, right? Like, This is why we didn't have things like the short range version of the car. And this is why so many of the used Ioniq 5s and 6s I see are ultimate package cars, which is like fully loaded. But that's out of the window. That's no longer available. You can't, the incentives are about $4,000 now in Quebec where I live versus 12 or 13 or 14 in the past. And so when I look at these cars, they end up being like $60,000 cars. It doesn't necessarily feel like it's worth that money. And there's still a couple of months to go before we actually have to pull the trigger. So maybe pricing will come down a little bit. But I started looking at used EVs. And specifically, I started looking at the used Kona, because the Kona's been on the market for so long, 2019. It had a refresh sort of in 2021. It was mostly cosmetic. But around that time, there was also a battery recall. That there was a problematic drive battery for a number of vehicles, and they ended up getting a brand new battery. And I think that also shifted over to primarily the large battery cars instead of the smaller battery models that were available previous to that. So if you look at like the 2021 and the 2022 cars in Canada, if you're willing to buy one that has miled out of the battery warranty, you can pick them up for like 15, 16 grand Canadian, which is about 12,000 US. That is a substantial discount over what they were new. And if you definitely want to have some battery life remaining, it's an 8-year warranty, I believe, or 100,000 miles. That's 160,000 kilometers. You can pick up a Kona with about 50,000 miles or 80,000 kilometers for around 21 or 22,000, which is still like a 50% discount for the most part.
I want to point out that some people might think, and I'm going to point out that there has been a Kona Electric on sale since, like you mentioned, 2019. The 2019 model year version of the Kona Electric actually has really competitive range compared to the current one.
Okay.
Did you know that?
No, but I'm not shopping those because they're way outside the battery window. And I also want the refresh.
Right. I just wanted to point that out because there might be some people who are listening to this saying, well, yeah, an older electric car obviously is going to be really far behind in terms of technology and and performance.
No,
but in Canada, the 2019 Kona Electric offers 415 kilometers of range, while the current gen version with the 17-inch wheels offers 420 kilometers of range, which is a difference of just 5 kilometers, which is unbelievable.
There's actually, I don't think you're right about that. The current ones that I see advertised, because of my search for these vehicles, I'm getting bombarded by ads on social media, and I'm seeing 488 kilometers advertised for the Kona EV.
The current one, the new one?
Yeah, and that's what I have. I'm looking at my old review, and I can't find the number.
I'm looking at the NRCan numbers.
Maybe the dealers that are advertising to me are not being truthful. That's entirely possible.
That is very much possible.
But because there's a lot of these ads where I click and it's like, click here to check out the details of this deal, and I do, and it's a total bait and switch. It's like a completely different vehicle. It's super annoying. But in any case, the reason why the numbers are so similar is because the platform hasn't changed.
Yeah, and the batteries. I think the battery is very similar in size.
Like they did the power reduction that I mentioned, but it's still largely the same motor and the same power management and the same battery. Like they've just been refining them gradually. It's not like a major shift for newer versions of the Kona EV, even though the generation that we're talking about, the new one, does look quite different. They made some pretty big changes there. So the other thing that appeals to me about the Kona EV, in addition to the price, is the efficiency. Because it's small and light, it is way more efficient than even the Ioniqs. Because they're much heavier with a larger battery. So we talked a lot about on the podcast about how these giant trucks that are basically just carrying around a huge battery and it kills their efficiency. The Kona EV is like going to get double or maybe even 2.5 times more efficiency than like an Escalade IQ or a Silverado EV.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and that's something that I think is important, because you look at the size of the battery and you're like, oh, like that's 68.4 kilowatt hours. It's not huge, right? But it doesn't have to be huge because the vehicle itself is small, and it's also front wheel drive, which means you're not driving that second axle. You lose the weight there of the extra motor that you don't have, and any kind of parasitic loss that might be attached to it.
Yeah. So, I mean, in general, I think that this is where the Kona Electric really shines as a used car. As you mentioned, maybe 2 or 3 years old, because you'll still get the warranty, and you're not really losing much in terms of the car's like feature set hasn't changed dramatically over the past 6 years. You're probably going to get maybe better or more like driver assistance features, but in terms of, you know, the usual stuff of like Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, you'll probably have that. I think maybe the early model had a head-up display, but one of those flappy types.
Ugh.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm really.
I don't remember that feature. The only ones I really remember, the awful ones in the Mazdas.
But it is a very compelling product at half the price, if not more.
And I also find it more compelling than a used Bolt, because I really like the Bolt when it was new for its pricing. When it's used, it's still a good deal. You can get them for around $15,000 as well, but they're considerably older.
It's just that charging speed is much worse on the Bolt, right?
I think it is. I think that the Kona is like, what, 50 kilowatts?
No, I think the Bolt maxes out, I think, at 50. Okay. And I think the Kona must do a little bit more.
The interior is also nicer in the Hyundai.
Yeah. The Bolt uses a lot of hard plastics, things that can get dirty really quickly.
I think the Bolt might be a little bit bigger inside.
I think the Bolt potentially has more cargo room than the first gen Kona EV, if that's something that people are looking at.
So anything else that you wanted to talk about with the Kona?
No, I think we've covered it pretty thoroughly between this episode and the previous ones. What about you? What are you talking about this week?
I'm talking about a vehicle that Sami hates, absolutely hates. Maybe the vehicle you like the least of all current new vehicles, Sami.
Okay.
Is that possible?
I think it's possible.
What's your least favorite car? If you had to pick a car, if you were at a rental counter and someone came to you with the keys to this car, what is the car that would make you just like shudder with revulsion at the thought of having to spend a weekend behind the wheel?
I mean, besides something like an over mild like Jeep Compass, or do you know what I mean? Sometimes they feel like they're just rattling apart. But I know that you're gonna goad me into saying this car that you've been testing, which is the 2025 Honda
2026.
Oh dear. 26 Honda HR-V. And I will repeat the point that I said last time I tested this vehicle is that Honda used to make really good compact cars, ones that were engaging and fun to drive. Yeah, subcompact cars. Ones that were engaging and fun to drive, ones that emphasized a few really important elements like cargo room and fuel efficiency. And when they went to the HR-V, they threw all of their previous wins and all of their like learning on those subcompact cars right out the window.
So I didn't hate the HR-V at first. I picked it up.
You even told me that. You messaged me saying it's not that bad.
I drove it home on the highway. It's fine. I didn't really have any issues with it. The real problems began when I left the highway and started dealing with variable speeds. Like starting, stopping, going up and down fairly steep hills, the kind of situations where you're not maintaining a highway speed at all times, but you have to deal with like traffic, cars cutting in and out of like, side roads, cyclists, that kind of thing. The biggest problem is, so for 2026, the HR-V has been refreshed, but it's essentially meaningless for the model I drove. I drove an EXL, which is the top trim. It was like $42,000 in Canada. In the US, it's similarly priced. It's actually a better deal in Canada. It's about $38,000, I think.
That is a great deal
for the all-wheel drive model. And it starts in. Oh no, sorry, I'm incorrect. It's in the low 30s in the US. So I think I'm right. 32,000.
Get your bearings.
I am, but you interrupted me. It's in the high 20s to the low 30s for an EXL. For a HR-V. There's not a big spread. I think all-wheel drive is standard in Canada on the higher trims. In the US, you can add it or take it away. So the real problem is the engine hasn't been touched by this refresh. The only thing, like lesser models got a bit more equipment. The EXL got some different colors, and that was pretty much it. It's a little odd that they positioned it as a refresh. The vehicle's been on the market for 3 years in this form. This is like the version of the HR-V that sits on a modified CR-V platform, I think. And that's a big part of the problem because this is a heavier version of the car. It's like 3,300 to 3,400 pounds, but it has the 2-liter 4-cylinder engine that you can get in the Civic, and it's paired with a continuously variable transmission that is absolutely awful. So you have 158 horsepower and 138 pound-feet of torque to play with. That's not a lot. You really need a gearbox that's going to be able to maximize that. But instead of that, what Honda has done, and I don't even really understand this, I think they're trying to get as much fuel efficiency out of the setup as possible and kind of ignored everything else about it because the vehicle is incapable of choosing the proper power band for the situation that you're in. Even when I was like slowly driving like 25 miles an hour up a twisty road, it would yo-yo back and forth with engine speeds like not only is that abrasive to the ear, but underneath the accelerator pedal, you can't really tell how much pressure you should be putting on the gas. Like the engine feels like it's all over the place, and you can't. In addition to this behavior, it's extremely slow. Like it's 10 seconds 0 to 60 on a good day.
Yeah.
And like you put all this together and you have to wonder why this vehicle was allowed to be sold with this drivetrain, because Honda has way better options. Like I believe in the Civic, it's the same drivetrain that's tuned completely differently. And it's not bad.
No, the CVT in the Civic has often been described as really decent.
And there are also hybrid and turbo motors available from Honda that they could have put in a model that they know is going to be a little bit heavier. And I'm talking about driving this by myself. I'm not talking about when you're in an HR-V with like 3 other people, and it suddenly weighs like 600 pounds more. And it's nightmarish to drive in those situations. And the fuel mileage was fine. I got like 30 miles combined in the vehicle. That beats the 27 miles per gallon that it's advertised at. I think that's like 8.1 or something like that, liters per 100 kilometers. I'm okay with that. But really, I would sacrifice a couple of miles per gallon if I had a vehicle that didn't sound like the engine was going to blow through the hood when I put my foot down trying to merge on the highway.
I'm super impressed you got that kind of fuel efficiency, because I did not receive, in my testing, I did not get that kind of fuel efficiency.
But you're primarily city, right?
Yes. Lately, I've been very much city. And it was not, there was no redeeming factor. Even, you know, the fact that it's a subcompact crossover, or at least in that segment, it didn't feel really like nimble and agile the way like a subcompact crossover could feel. It's weird
because like I read some other people's opinions that said it did feel that way.
No, not a chance.
I didn't really notice it. Like it wasn't offensive to me. The handling was fine, but it wasn't engaging. You know,
the turning circle didn't feel particularly like tight.
I don't know, turning circle. You're using these fancy terms that I can't keep up with.
Okay, sure.
But more to the point, like we own in this household, we have a Crosstrek, which also has an underpowered 4-cylinder engine and a CVT, and it is night and day compared to the Honda. It's not even close. Like I've never experienced this level of rubber band yo-yoing in a modern CVT. It's been years since this has happened, and
right.
it really makes me feel like Honda did not put the effort in on tuning this vehicle.
That's what I've been saying. That's what I have been saying this whole time.
And what sucks is the rest of it is pretty decent. Like it looks okay. It has a really spacious interior. Like the back seat has a lot of room. It has a fair amount of cargo space compared to some of its rivals. And what's nice is the rear seat folds totally flat. And mine came with like a protection kit, which is like an accessory that puts a rubber I guess protector on the back of the seats and on the cargo area. There's a lot of practical stuff to like about the vehicle. I mean, it's very simple in other ways, like the infotainment screen, dead simple, not a lot of features. Honda likes to load all sorts of sub menus into the gauge cluster, and then you have to scroll through them with the steering wheel, and it's annoying to try and program everything so that the safety systems work how you want them to. But other than that, like, it's pretty basic. It does what it's supposed to do. And they sell 150,000 of these a year.
It can't be to people who are consciously wanting this car.
They sell 400,000 CRVs. And I wonder how many people get out of an HRV and are like, I want a CRV. You figure it would turn them off. It would turn them off the brand.
Negging them into a CRV.
No, I don't even think maybe that's the strategy, but I feel like it would backfire. I think people would just be like, I don't want another Honda crossover. Like this would really turn me off.
No, what if they go into the dealership and they're like, I want a CRV, but I can't afford it. Let me drive this HRV. Oh no, I gotta get a CRV.
The HRV is the CRV is a good vehicle. And it's upsetting to me that Honda can't make that happen in a subcompact. And it's crazy that they're selling 150,000 a year when literally every other subcompact SUV has a better drivetrain.
I pointed out that you asked me actually off podcast and the other day, if there was a crossover I would take over this. I would take this over. And the only one that came to mind, I don't even know if it's on the market anymore, is the Ford EcoSport.
EcoSport is complete garbage.
It's complete garbage.
It was a vehicle that was brought over from their international division. It was not tuned for North America. It did not have a competitive interior. The day it went on sale, it was out of date. And it was kind of a cynical play from Ford to try and have a subcompact. They lost the Fiesta. They still realized that they had to have something cheap in showrooms. And man, that was just a bad vehicle. And it's rare for me to say that, but I can't find anything redeeming about the EcoSport.
There's two like often forgotten bargain bin vehicles that are often like laughed upon on the industry, which is the Mitsubishi Outlander Sport, which is called the RVR in Canada, and the Eclipse Cross, two smaller than compact crossovers that are under $30,000 in the US. Actually $24,000 for the Outlander Sport. And I would say either of those are better than this.
And they're very popular in Quebec. I see lots of both of those.
Why do you think that is? That's pricing. So interesting. Yeah, pricing, I guess so.
For sure. But yeah, if this was a company that I knew couldn't do better, I would be less disappointed in this vehicle. But it was a car that I actively found reasons not to drive during the week I had it. That's unusual for me, where I will avoid getting behind the wheel of a vehicle that I have to drive. I was forcing myself to use it. It's just not pleasant, I don't need it to be fun to drive. I just don't want it to be a chore. And the way this vehicle is designed, with the fact that I live in a hilly area, means it's the engine is constantly having to put in the work, and it did not want to do that. It was super reluctant. And because of that, I mean, wow, like such a wasted effort from Honda, I think.
It's the thesis that I came in hot with. They are a good automaker when they at least they have shown that they're a good automaker. They have shown that they're good even with small vehicles or price constrained vehicles, and they totally phoned it in on this car, despite the fact that all of the bits and pieces that make the HR-V are successful in other parts of the Honda lineup. Speaking about the powertrain, about the platform, about all that other stuff.
I mean, buy a Civic hatchback. Please. Honestly, like that is
especially the hybrid models.
If this is your price point, go get that. It is so much better. Forget about all-wheel drive, which is, I guess, the only advantage this has over one of those vehicles. The Civic is better by leaps and bounds. And then if you have to have a crossover or an SUV, I mean, there's a Kona hybrid, right?
Yeah.
Is there
there isn't.
Kia Niro hybrid? Sorry.
Niro, yes.
So there's that. There's the super excellent Chevrolet Trax, which is cheaper than this and better in every possible way,
except for its front wheel drive only.
Yeah, but it's still better.
Kicks, buddy. Kicks. Old. I think they still sell a last gen Kicks, which is front wheel drive, and
I haven't driven the current gen, so I can't. Really
a new gen one that's sure to be. There's no way it can be worse than the HR-V. Like, do you know what I mean?
But like, I bring up the Trax because the Trax is probably the best compact crossover. Turbocharged 3-cylinder, great fuel mileage, nice inside, it's fun to drive, it's super affordable, it's useful. Like I like our Crosstrek, and it has all-wheel drive, and you can't get that with the Trax, but like the Trax is definitely the one I would probably recommend people drive over everything else. Like if budget is your main concern, it's a vehicle you can get that's cheap, that isn't going to disappoint you. Whereas this Honda is a vehicle that's not cheap and will disappoint you and just leave you wondering like where you spent all that money, like where that money went.
Yeah, it went right to Honda's pockets and they're laughing at you, really.
It's bad news.
Actually, I will add, although there's nothing offensively wrong about the Corolla Cross,
I don't want the
one.
Corolla Cross.
Yeah,
I find the drivetrain is problematic there as well.
But you can get a hybrid. You can get a hybrid version that's pretty good.
I think it's only hybrid.
Oh, my mistake.
I don't think they offer a non-hybrid anymore.
Then I don't know what I'm talking about. But I think that is another vehicle that I'm usually like, I don't recommend it,
No, I found the Corolla Cross to be, the drivetrain was rough. Like not in the same way as the Honda. I found it like had kind of a rough idle and wasn't smooth on acceleration and stuff. It didn't have like the help me, I'm drowning kind of feel of the HR-V.
No, there is a non-hybrid version, at least in the US. Yeah.
Okay.
So I've driven the hybrid and I found it to be pretty good. But
I think it's the same hybrid system as the RAV4.
The RAV4, that would make it pretty punchy. I thought it was just the Corollas.
No, I could be wrong.
Well,
it's been a long time.
I gotta get my butt in the seat. It's a 200 horsepower. No, wow, that is pretty good actually. Okay. Anything else you want to tell me about the HR-V?
200 horsepower. That's the RAV4 rating.
I'm pretty sure the RAV4 is up to 220 now.
Oh wow! Turned up the wick. Get that extra 10%.
Yeah. Is there actually? I wanted to tell you about this because I think in Europe they sell a crossover version of the Fit, which is known as the Jazz.
These are different platforms now.
Yeah, they're different platforms, and it looks so much more entertaining. I wish we got this.
I wish we got subcompact hatchbacks. Shout out to the Spark. I missed the Spark. I kind of missed the Fiesta. Sammy, how do you feel about the Accent?
The Accent can go away. But
it can go away.
I did like the Rio, which is really pretty much the same thing as an Accent.
Yeah, I'm surprised by that.
In Canada, they sold. It was one of the first cars I remember that came with in that price range that came with standard heated seats and a heated steering wheel, which I found to be wild for a car of that price.
Yeah, heated steering wheels are like the stealth luxury that's in so many vehicles now.
There's a Honda Jazz Crossstar in Europe.
Crossstar.
That's what this thing should have been all the way from the beginning.
But then they probably wouldn't be able to offer all-wheel drive, right?
Probably. There's a hybrid version. Let's see.
There should be a hybrid version of the HRV. I think that would be excellent.
Yeah, I don't know how we botched this so bad.
It's wild. Like you can get a Kia Niro hybrid, and you can't get a hybrid HRV. Like I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Like that doesn't make any sense at all.
They totally blew it. They blew it, and I can't help but wonder if they were waiting for a mid-cycle refresh.
This is the mid-cycle refresh.
But they didn't do it. Like they didn't do it.
I think this might be one of those cases where, remember how, we used to rag on the 4Runner for being like the last 5-speed automatic in the business with a super old V6, and they were selling like 250,000 units a year, and they didn't care what we said because they could just keep selling it with no investment in it. And I think this HRV is kind of the same deal. It's like you posited, maybe it was time for that refresh, and then someone at Honda was like, but we're selling 150,000. And then they're like, well, forget it. And they just threw it out the window, and they're going to keep riding this until they can't anymore.
Yeah, I think that's probably, if it keeps making you money, why change it?
Now, I have a question, Sammy. Is the ADX based on this?
The ADX?
Yeah, the Acura ADX.
Yeah, totally. Yes.
What engine does that have?
I think it has the Integra engine. Let me double check.
So it has the turbo 1.5? Is that what's in the
Integra?
Integra?
Which is the same as this, isn't it?
No, this has a 2-liter 4-cylinder.
Oh, yeah.
This has the base Civic motor.
The base Civic motor. This comes with a 1.5 turbo that makes 190 horsepower and 179 pounds.
Now, is that engine still available in the regular Civic? I think it's been removed.
The 1.5 turbo? For sure.
It's still available?
I think so.
Okay, I'm
checking now. My fingers are a little slow today.
The base engine is the 2-liter naturally aspirated.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could step up to the 1.5, or I think Honda would probably prefer that you step up to the
CRV.
No, I think the hybrid. I think they're really pushing the Civic hybrid.
Okay, Civic HRV. Oh, we were talking about this. I don't need to talk about this. 2-liter engine, and then Civic.
You can't get the 1.5 unless you buy an SI. There's the 150, the LX and the Sport have the 2-liter engine, and then
they took away our favorite things.
And it's even less horsepower in the Civic. It's 150, and then you go they're pushing.
What about the hatch? Maybe I'm.
No, they're pushing the Sport hybrid. That's the upgrade now.
Oh dear.
For the sedan.
Well, the Sport hybrid is excellent.
Yeah. I haven't looked at the hatch.
What did I do?
What do you mean? What did you do?
How did I make that mistake?
Civic
Si gets the 1.5, but that's manual only. So that kind of knocks it to a very particular type of buyer. And then what is this thing got? I'm talking about the Civic Sport. Yeah, also 2-liter engine.
So this engine this engine's pulling a lot of duty, is what I'm telling you.
So Honda's just pulled its 1.5 turbo from all of its cool cars.
Yeah, I don't understand why.
And stuck them into Acuras?
I have two theories. The first is it's a fuel economy thing. Mm-hmm. They might not have been able to squeeze out as much fuel mileage as they wanted to on testing, so they removed it. But the second one, and this was speaking to what you were saying before, it's an upgrade thing, where they're convincing people to leave it behind and pay more for the Sport hybrid.
Yeah, which is excellent.
So
I will point out, Sport hybrid is really good.
I'm going to go back to where's the Sport hybrid HRV?
Is that going to save the car for you? It will solve
definitely,
two problems.
100%. It would solve every problem.
It will solve the performance problem, which is that the car feels awful to drive. It'll solve the NVH issue, which is that the CVT and the underpowered 2-liter just feel like they're vibrating the car and making a ton of noise. It'll solve the fuel efficiency issue on my end. But then it won't solve the pricing problem, because I think the HRV is it's kind of expensive.
Well, if you make it the standard engine, it might.
You think they're going to make the hybrid the standard engine?
What I'm saying is, if you do make it an upgrade and you make it on the EXL, I don't think they're going to boost the price of the EXL. I think the EXL will stay at the same price. It's $30,000 in the US. So like with delivery, it's like 32. In Canada, it's like 42. So I don't think you can realistically push farther than that, because if you do, you're up against CRV. Mm-hmm. And the CRV starts at 30,000 or 31,000 basically. So there's almost no air gap between a base CRV and a loaded EXL. But if you made that loaded EXL a hybrid, that's much more compelling, and that would keep people from stepping up to CRV. So I'm not a brand architect, even though I talk like one on the podcast, but that's, I think, what I would do if I cared about selling 151,000 EX or HRV0 instead of just 150. But I think that's all I have to say about this vehicle. I don't want to belabor the point. I feel like I've been beating up on it too much.
No, but I mean, we are aligned on the essential concept of this car. Which
it's good in every way except the one that's very important. And that's
being good.
Well, no, there's one aspect of it. It ticks every box except for one that you really have to tick if you want to be taken seriously. And that's what's too bad about the HRV.
Interesting. To me, it's just like I said, Honda is capable of making a good car, and they didn't do it. They just don't want to do it with this.
I want to note about something that happened last week at the podcast. I accidentally scheduled it 3 days in the past for publication.
What do you mean by 3 days in the past?
Well, I edited it on a Wednesday, and I think I set the publication date to the previous Tuesday. So instead of it going out on Sunday, it went out, or I think actually I did it on Thursday.
It went out on Wednesday.
No, it went out on a Tuesday. It was not carbon dated, but predated. Okay. So when it launched as though it was in the past. So that messed up all of our tracking. I have no idea how many people actually downloaded it or who was shown the podcast, because I changed the date to the current date when I found out that I had done this. But when I look at the podcast now, it's clear that it didn't make it to everybody. And I know that most people expect to get it on Sunday, and their podcatchers are probably expecting to get it on Sunday. And I don't know how a podcast application reacts to a post-dated or a predated podcast. So if you're hearing this podcast and you're like, why didn't they release a podcast last week? We did. It was about the Cadillac Optic, and it's out there. And we also answered a lot of listener questions. So maybe look at the list of podcast episodes from Unnamed Automotive Podcast and download that manually if it hasn't shown up on your as a push.
You'll want to hear our take on the Optic. I think it was a good conversation.
But also I know a lot of people asked us questions last week and we answered them, and I don't want to leave those people hanging.
Anything else you want to talk about this week? That's it?
That's it.
If you enjoyed this week's episode, head on over to our website, unnamedautomotivepodcast.com. You can find all of our previous episodes, even the ones that you might have missed, like last week's Optic episode, or maybe our bonus episodes, like our summer feature showcase, or our old Star Car face-offs. We love talking about those. You can also fill out a little form there, and when you do so, to ask us a question or give us some feedback, it allows you to get in touch with us. We really appreciate your feedback. We love it. But if you don't want to go through the website, you can find us on Instagram. I'm at Sammy_ha, like you're laughing. And Ben is at Hunting Benjamin. If you want to email us, the easy way to do that is to email Benjamin at benjaminhunting.com. And I think that's all our situation here.
Sammy, what are you going to be talking about next week?
I don't know. It's a secret.
It's a secret. Okay. Mine's not a secret. I'm going to be talking about the Prius plug-in, which I haven't driven for a couple of years, but it's currently sitting in my driveway and it's bright red, and I have things to say about it.
Perfect. I can't wait. I'll talk to you next week.
Bye.
Bye.